Big Sam stood 6 feet behind Bumpy Johnson, close enough to smell the cognac on his breath. The room was packed, jazz humming, laughter drifting. No one noticed the pistol coming up. No one noticed the hand shaking. Sam squeezed the trigger. Click. Not a gunshot. Just a sound. Small. Hollow. Final. In that instant, time stopped. 300 people froze.
In that instant,
the band died mid-note.
Stopped.
And in the silence that followed that single click, every balance of power in Harlem shifted forever.
In that instant,
the man holding the gun wasn't an enemy. It wasn't a rival, a stranger, or some outsider chasing money. It was Big Sam. Have you ever heard of a betrayal so quiet, it didn't need a gunshot to destroy a man? Stay with me because what you're about to hear about Bumpy Johnson will force you to rethink power, loyalty, and what it really means to win when a story like this begins to unfold. For 5 years, Sam had been at Bumpy Johnson's side. He'd taken bullets meant for him. Stood guard through raids, wars, funerals. Bumpy called him brother, and in Harlem, that word meant more than blood. Sam knew Bumpy's habits, his timing, the way he sat at that table every Friday night. He knew where to stand, how close to get, when Bumpy's back would be turned. That's what made it lethal. The betrayal didn't come from the shadows. It came from arm's length. From the one man Bumpy never thought he had to watch. The price of betrayal wasn't abstract. It was precise. $50,000. That was what the 5 families put on Bumpy Johnson's life. Enough money to erase debts. Enough to buy clean air, clean sheets, and time a sick child didn't have. Because this wasn't about greed. Not at first. It was about Big Sam's daughter, coughing through nights, wasting away in a charity ward while bills stacked higher than hope. Tony Maroney didn't threaten Sam with a gun. He threatened him with reality. Loyalty doesn't pay hospital bills. Honor doesn't stop tuberculosis. Money does. And if Sam said no, the message was clear: his daughter would die slowly, and Sam would still end up dead in the street one day, broke and forgotten. So the choice wasn't framed as right or wrong. It was framed as now or never. One pull of a trigger for a lifetime of regret. One act of betrayal for a chance at saving blood. And that's the question that sits at the center of this story, heavier than any weapon. When the cost is your family, what would you choose? By 1958, Harlem was under siege. The Italian mafia had been circling it for years, watching the numbers money pour out of the neighborhood every single day. Nickels and dimes from poor people added up to millions, and the 5 families wanted every cent. To them, Harlem wasn't a community. It was a prize. Untapped, undervalued, ready to be taken. They tried everything. They sent enforcers. Those men left in ambulances. They tried negotiations. They were laughed out of the room. They leaned on politicians and police. Bumpy leaned back harder. Because Bumpy Johnson wasn't just standing in their way. He was the wall. He knew the streets, but more importantly, the people. Shop owners. Numbers runners. Musicians. Councilmen. Everyone knew who protected Harlem, and everyone knew what happened when outsiders crossed the line. Bumpy didn't rule by terror alone. He ruled by loyalty, by favors remembered, by debts never forgotten. That made him dangerous. You can kill a gangster. You can't kill a system built on respect. And that's why the 5 families reached a conclusion they hated. As long as Bumpy Johnson was alive, Harlem would never belong to them. So if they couldn't break him from the outside, they would destroy him from within. By the time this story unfolds, Bumpy Johnson was at the peak of his power, but not the kind most men chased. He wasn't loud. He didn't posture. He didn't need to remind people who he was. Harlem already knew. To the neighborhood, Bumpy wasn't just a gangster collecting money. He was the man who kept the wolves out. When families fell behind on rent, Bumpy covered it. When police harassed black businesses, Bumpy made phone calls that made it stop. When outsiders tried to muscle in, they didn't stay long. That's what separated him from everyone else. Bumpy understood something the Italian mob never did. Fear burns fast, but respect lasts. He listened more than he spoke. He remembered favors. He paid debts. And when violence came, it was deliberate, never random. People didn't follow Bumpy because they were scared of him. They followed him because they trusted him. That kind of authority can't be bought and can't be stolen. It has to be earned, day by day, decision by decision. And by 1958, Bumpy Johnson had earned it completely, which is why the idea of killing him was more than an assassination attempt. It was an attack on the balance holding Harlem together. And everyone involved knew it. The decision wasn't made in the street. It was made behind closed doors. In a quiet room far from Harlem, the leaders of the 5 families sat around a table and admitted something they rarely said out: loud force wasn't working. Every enforcer they sent came back broken. Every threat bounced off a man who didn't scare easily. Harlem resisted because Bumpy Johnson made it resist. That's when the conversation shifted. If you can't break a man from the outside, you open him from the inside. Frank Costello said it flat, without drama. Guns create martyrs. Betrayal creates silence. The room went still as the idea settled. They weren't looking for muscle anymore. They were looking for access. One name kept coming up. Big Sam. Sam wasn't just close to Bumpy, he was inseparable. He stood behind him every night. He guarded his back, his routines, his blind spots. He knew where Bumpy sat, when he relaxed, when he was vulnerable. If there was one person on earth who could get close enough to end it quietly, it was him. Tony Maroney was chosen to make the approach. Not a hitter. A talker. A man who knew how to find pressure points, medical bills, family, fear. Tony wouldn't threaten first. He'd offer help, then he'd explain the cost of refusing it. The plan was clean. No shootouts, no witnesses, one shot, one traitor. Harlem wakes up leaderless. To the 5 families it felt perfect, elegant, inevitable. What they didn't know, what they never considered, was that Bumpy Johnson had built his power on the same principle they were about to test. He never stopped watching his own people. And the moment Big Sam became the answer to their problem, the clock on their plan had already started running out. The approach came quietly. Big Sam was leaving his building when the black Cadillac rolled up beside him, smooth and unhurried. The window slid down. Tony Maroney sat in the back seat, smiling like a man offering insurance, not death. He said Sam's name like they were old friends. 5 minutes, Tony promised. Just talk. Sam should have walked away. He didn't. Inside the car, the door closed with a soft, final sound. Tony didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten, at least not at first. He talked about loyalty. About how admirable it was. Then he talked about reality. Loyalty doesn't pay hospital bills. Loyalty doesn't keep a sick child breathing through the night. Tony knew about Sam's daughter. The coughing, the charity ward. The bills Sam couldn't outrun. He let the silence do the work, then opened the briefcase. Neat stacks. Clean money. Enough to fix everything. Enough to save her. All for one moment. One step behind Bumpy. One pull of a trigger. Then a car waiting. New names. A new life. Sam asked what happened if he said no. That's when Tony stopped smiling. Then your daughter dies slowly. You keep guarding Bumpy, knowing the Italians won't forget you, said no. And one day, whether you're loyal or not, you'll still end up dead. Poor, forgotten. The threat wasn't loud. It was inevitable. Sam got out of the car without answering. The briefcase stayed behind. That night, he didn't sleep. He saw his daughter's face. Heard her breathing. Saw the money every time he closed his eyes. 3 days later, Sam made the call. Money versus blood. Loyalty versus survival. And once that choice was made, there was no walking it back. That night stretched longer than any Sam had ever lived through. He lay awake listening to the city breathe, sirens in the distance, pipes rattling, his daughter's cough echoing in his head, even though she wasn't there. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same 2 images, her struggling to breathe, and that briefcase snapping open. Stacks of money glowing like a way out. He tried to tell himself there was another option. There wasn't. By morning, the choice had already started rotting inside him. He went through his routines like a ghost. Guard duty, short answers. Eyes down. But the decision kept pressing closer, tighter, until it wasn't a question anymore, it was a countdown. 3 days later, Sam picked up the phone. His hand shook as he dialed the number Tony had given him. No speeches, no explanations, just surrender. I'm in, he said. Then, quieter, but I want half up front. There was a pause on the other end, then satisfaction. Agreement, the sound of a trap closing. The money arrived fast, clean, heavy, final. Sam didn't count it twice. He didn't have to. The moment he touched it, something inside him crossed a line it could never step back over. From that second on, Sam wasn't just thinking about betrayal. He was committed to it. Every step he took after that, every night standing behind Bumpy, every conversation, every laugh was now a lie moving toward a single moment. One pull of a trigger, One sound. One irreversible act. Sam told himself it was for his daughter. That didn't make it lighter. It just made it permanent. What Sam didn't know, what the five families never considered, was that the plan was already exposed. Bumpy Johnson hadn't survived this long by trusting blind loyalty. He survived by knowing people. Knowing their pressures. Their fears. Their breaking points. Harlem talked to him every day, even when it didn't realize it was talking. Bartenders. Shoeshine boys. Cab drivers. Parking attendants. People no one paid attention to except Bumpy. One of them saw the black Cadillac. Saw Tony Maroney in the back seat. Saw Big Sam get in. That information moved faster than any gunman ever could. By the time Sam wrestled with his conscience, Bumpy was already 3 moves ahead. He didn't confront him. He didn't warn him. He didn't shut the plan down. That would have been too easy and useless. Kill one traitor and another would take his place. Fear creates silence. Information creates control, so Bumpy waited. He watched Sam closely. The shaking hands. The distracted eyes. The man caught between loyalty and desperation. And Bumpy understood something crucial: desperate men don't need pressure. They make mistakes on their own. That's when Bumpy made his choice. He wouldn't stop the betrayal. He would use it. Because real power doesn't come from reacting to threats. It comes from letting your enemy believe they're winning right up until the moment they realize they never were. Bumpy Johnson didn't reach for a gun. He reached for time. Most men in his position would have erased the threat immediately. One call. One body in the river. Problem solved. But Bumpy understood something deeper: killing a traitor ends a problem. Exposing one ends a strategy. So he changed the rules. He called in Victor, a gunsmith he'd trusted for years, and gave him an order that sounded almost absurd. Not a better weapon. Not a silencer. A gun that looked perfect, felt perfect, but would never fire. No bullet. No strike. Just a hollow sound when the trigger was pulled. Then Bumpy waited for the right moment. He sent Sam away on an errand that couldn't be rushed. While Sam was gone, Bumpy stepped into his apartment like a ghost and swapped the real gun for the dummy. Same weight. Same balance. Same lie in Sam's pocket. Sam would never know. He didn't need to. Because the point wasn't to stop the shot. It was to let it happen. Bumpy didn't warn Sam. He didn't confront him. He let Sam walk toward the moment of betrayal with full confidence, believing the ending was already written. That's what made it perfect. When the trigger was pulled, there would be no blood, only truth. In one move, Bumpy took control of every outcome. If Sam fired, the room would learn. If he didn't, the Italians would still be exposed. No chaos. No collateral. No chance. This wasn't revenge. This was checkmate, delivered quietly, in front of everyone who mattered. Lennox Lounge was full that night. 300 people packed into the room: musicians, hustlers, politicians, businessmen. Jazz floated through the air, glasses clinked, deals whispered across tables. It was just another Friday in Harlem. Until it wasn't. Big Sam moved through the crowd like he always did. No one paid attention. That was the point. He belonged there. He stopped behind Bumpy Johnson's chair, close enough to reach out and touch him. Bumpy's back was turned, deep in conversation, relaxed, vulnerable. Sam's hand slid inside his jacket. The pistol came out. For a split second, the world narrowed to one choice that could never be undone. Sam raised the gun, aimed at the back of Bumpy's head, and pulled the trigger. Click. Not a bang, not a scream. Just a sound so small it froze the room. The band stopped mid-note. Conversations died in half-finished sentences. 300 faces turned at once. Sam stood there, arm extended, staring at the useless gun in his hand. His breath caught. His knees went weak. Bumpy didn't flinch. He took a slow sip of cognac, set the glass down gently, and turned around in his chair. His eyes met Sam's. There was no anger there. No shock. Only certainty. I've been counting on you. Those 5 words landed harder than any bullet ever could. In that moment, the truth became visible to everyone in the room. This wasn't an assassination attempt. It was a lesson. And there was no way back from it. For a few seconds, no one moved. The room stayed frozen in that single moment, the echo of the click still hanging in the air like smoke. Bumpy Johnson didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He didn't explain. He just let the silence do the work. I've been counting on you. That was all he said, and it was enough. Big Sam's grip loosened. The gun slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a dull sound that felt louder than the click itself. His shoulders collapsed inward. The man who had stood like a wall for 5 years suddenly looked small, exposed, hollowed out. He understood everything at once. The money. The plan. The 3 weeks of waiting. The trap he had walked into with his eyes open. Around them, 300 people watched a man break without a single blow being struck. No shouting. No blood. Just realization. Just shame. Because that sentence carried a truth no one in the room could escape. Bumpy Johnson had known. He had always known. And in Harlem, once people understood that Bumpy saw everything before it happened, something fundamental shifted. The threat wasn't violence anymore. It was inevitability. That one line didn't end Big Sam's career. It erased it. And it carved Bumpy Johnson's name deeper into history than any gunshot ever could. Bumpy Johnson stood up slowly, not in anger. In control. He didn't call for guns. He didn't order a beating. He didn't spill blood. Instead, he delivered a sentence far heavier than death. Big Sam would live, but he would disappear. Leave Harlem that night. Take his family and never return. No second chances. No redemption. That was the punishment. Sam wasn't just losing his job. He was losing his name, his place, his standing. In Harlem, that kind of exile was worse than a bullet. It meant you existed, but nowhere that mattered. Then Bumpy turned the verdict outward. When the Italians asked what happened, Sam was to tell them everything. That Bumpy knew. That loyalty couldn't be bought. And that mercy was a one-time offer. No blood on the floor. No bodies in the street. Just a message sent across the entire underworld. Harlem was not for sale. By morning, the story had already escaped Harlem. From back rooms in Brooklyn to cigar lounges in the Bronx, the message traveled fast. The hit had failed without a shot fired. The 5 families met in silence and reached a conclusion none of them liked. Force hadn't worked. Money hadn't worked. Betrayal hadn't worked. Every move against Bumpy Johnson only proved the same thing. He was always ahead. So they did something unheard of. They pulled back. Harlem was left alone, not conquered, not negotiated, respected. And from that night on, Bumpy Johnson was no longer just a powerful man. He became a symbol. Proof that real authority doesn't come from chaos, but from clarity. From knowing the board before the game even starts. The lesson outlived the night. Power isn't the gun. It's the mind holding it. Loyalty can't be purchased. Fear fades. Strategy endures. And now the question falls to you. If you were in Bumpy's place, would you have pulled the trigger or let the truth do the damage? Would you have spared the betrayer or erased him? If this story made you think, hit like. If you want more untold moments like this, subscribe. And in the comments, tell us what would you have done. More stories are coming. Don't miss the next move.